Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Two Soka, Two Sisters of a Certain Age, Conversations with a Therapist and a Doctor. I'm your co-host, Dr. Sophia Grant.
And I am your co-host, Judy Grant, licensed marriage and family therapist. Hi, everyone.
Hello. So we've been on a little hiatus, and we're not freshly back from Sweden, but, it's within recent memory. And we're here to talk to you about our trip to Sweden, why we went, what we saw, what we did, what our impressions were. But as per usual, we check in with each other. And I want to say, in California, we're in the middle of a heat wave, and
Crazy heat wave.
I woke up with ants on my body.
What?
Yes, I had
Oh my gosh.
and I'm like, I don't eat in bed. There's no reason for ants to be on me. Ants in my bathroom. I had butter out, and ants had swarmed the butter.
No.
Oh yeah. And
I hate that.
I'm not a killer of insects or things that come into my house, but if you're following me on YouTube, I have raid in almost every room because it's so annoying. But yeah, that's what you get, because yesterday it was like 110 degrees out here. Ridiculous.
Yeah, I think we clocked at 116,
Oh
and
my God.
it's just so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. I sit very still in my house to avoid any physical exertion.
And I'm really grateful that I have solar, because I will not be facing a huge electrical bill next month with the AC that I run. But it's, my heart goes out to all those people who have to work outside, gardeners, farm workers, anybody who is outdoors. And
stay hydrated, find some shade, rest in between, because it is brutal. Before we got on, I said, Candy, can you hear my fans? She's like, no, I can't hear them. I literally have two fans on, a tall one next to me, and then my trusty handheld, because even with the air conditioning, I need it blowing directly on me because it is so warm in the house.
Well, you're so warm. You're so warm.
Okay,
you're
yes,
so warm.
yes.
Let's face point of clarification. You're so warm.
Okay, and that goes right into me being of a certain age why I'm so warm.
Right.
But yeah, the summer heat, the summer insects, the mosquitoes are out. I have to wear little wristbands when I'm outside. It becomes very, it's kind of annoying. You want to enjoy your summer but it becomes stiflingly hot, and you have these insects around. But
yeah. So, where we didn't have insects?
We didn't have
insects in Sweden.
And it was a comfortable 70 something degrees, and it was lovely.
It was like high 60s. We flew to Sweden. First of all, I don't remember when we found out we'd be going to Sweden. Was it March?
Could have been March, yeah. March, April, something like that.
The ISPACAN conference, International Society of the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect, was held in Uppsala, Sweden. We submitted our proposal, our abstract. We were selected, and we went to Sweden. So we flew from LAX to New York, and then New York to Stockholm, and it was pleasant. It wasn't oppressive, the flight getting there, and we didn't have business class seats or anything. It was just kind of regular, like economy plus or something. But I didn't feel like uncomfortable,
And I think what also made it so easy was that when we arrived in Stockholm, and we're thinking, well, how do we get to Uppsala? There was a bus.
Right.
And what we found throughout our entire stay was the public transportation is phenomenal. We got on a bus that dropped us off literally, 150 yards from the entrance to our hotel.
Yes.
It was so easy. And the train station was immediately adjacent to the bus stop.
Right.
And that's how we got around.
Going back to the flight, just want to stress, when I travel, I start taking aspirin a few days before to thin my blood out a little bit, prevent blood clots from sitting for so long. I wear compression socks and I try and get up and walk around and get my blood circulating. And people of a certain age really need to do that. I worked with a woman who took her daughter to Paris when she was 13 for the first time. And 2 days in, mom got a blood clot in a country she didn't know about. She went into the hospital and her daughter went into CPS, Parisian CPS, because there was nobody to watch her. So after that was like, okay, aspirin, compression socks, etc. Then the husband came and everything was fine. But, and then get travel insurance with medical coverage. So we got to Sweden. Our hotel was super convenient and we traveled around on public transportation. And if it says the bus is going to be there at 8:03, the bus is there at 8:03. Judy, you're stuck. Yeah.
You were stuck.
Okay.
I thought you were frozen.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, it was super easy. So, we did some excursions before the conference started. What was your favorite excursion?
It's hard to say a favorite because they were so different.
Yeah.
We did a food tour.
Yeah.
Went to a variety of different places, tasting some traditional Swedish dishes and candies and such.
And by the way, licorice is huge in Sweden. The black licorice.
Yeah, there is no red licorice.
Swedish fish is not a thing in Sweden. It's just the black licorice, and then they salt the licorice. I didn't really like it. And it's harder to find the sweet licorice, the ones with the chocolate. It's usually salted and more savory. But my favorite, I loved my birthday trip, but my favorite was when we went to Tuna. That is a small, like an old, I think it's one of the first Christian towns in Sweden.
It dates back to 900s.
And we saw Viking ruins, and it's right on the water. And I kept on fantasizing that I had a vacation home in Sweden on the water. And it was just cute and walkable. And then we encountered ruins of a church, and there was a woman who was getting married there.
Suzanne.
And I think the baker was like, saw us and said, "Are you going to Suzanne's wedding? Where is it? Where is it?" And we don't know where it is. And this was a black woman. I assume Suzanne was black, and that's why she asked us. And then we saw another black family, and we're like, "Are you guys going to Suzanne's wedding?" They're like, "Yes." Do you know her? Anyway, we chatted.
We were ready to crash the wedding.
I know.
But Candy, you said that I wanted to kind of paint the picture. Suzanne was getting married in a church from I don't know how many hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Parts of the church had fallen down, and you really had the facade of the church. And it was so beautiful, even in its, ruined state. It was gorgeous. So we were able to peek in and see the benches and see the altar. We didn't see Suzanne. So that was my only challenge with that. I wish I had seen her.
And then what's interesting, if you are a Golden Girls fan, Rose Nyland grew up in St. Olaf, Minnesota, and there was a St. Olaf church in Sigtuna. So Rose is Swedish, or of Swedish descent. And we went to a few cemeteries, and I was looking for the last name Nyland on it. Although if you're a Golden Girls fan, that's Charlie's name. But I assume Charlie was Swedish also.
Your references, I don't know how many people can get that.
No. If they're of a certain age, everybody watch Golden Girls. And by the way, my friend in college said she imagines us, my friend group, as the Golden Girls. I was Dorothy, the sarcastic one, and she was Rose, the stupid one, and then another friend was the slut, Blanche.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, so a little bit back to Sweden. Beautiful. We stayed in Uppsala, which is a small university town. Lots of bridges, this beautiful river, a cathedral, the palace, beautiful views, just really comfortable. And at times we almost felt, is there anyone in this town? Because we're walking in the middle of the day and there are 12
There's
people out.
nobody, nobody.
But it seems like people come out more in the evenings, and when they come out, they're with their whole family.
Yeah.
We walked through areas where they had like play areas for kids, and families are playing together. We saw a lot of that in Sweden, how families are like engaging in these fun activities together.
Yeah.
So Uppsala is beautiful. We walked all over. We saw a lot of things there. We went to what? What are you laughing at?
Day one.
Day one.
Oh, when we're going to a garden, and then like there's a church, and it looks like perhaps unhoused people are getting food and things like that. And like we're walking in front of a church, and I look at this man, and I'm like, dear God, is that a penis? And
Great.
this man,
you have to bring this up.
Yeah, I mean, it was like I was close enough to know he was circumcised.
Okay, Candy. Good God.
Yeah, but like I don't know what his junk was doing exposed, but we just backed away and walked in the opposite direction.
I will say that we did not allow that to taint our feelings or experience of Sweden. It was just a random man.
Yeah, and it wasn't directed at us.
No.
You know? Yeah. But that was kind of jarring the first day.
Oh my gosh. Of course you share that.
Yes. I mean, it happened. Okay,
so we also went to an area called Gamla Uppsala, which means Old Uppsala. Yeah. And that was an area with a beautiful church dating back, many, many centuries ago. But the big thing about Gamla Uppsala are the mounds. And the mounds are 3 small hills in a row. And there's a museum on site. And what we learned was the mounds were Viking burial grounds. But similar to the pyramids of Egypt, only one person was buried in each of the mounds. So that they were of high ranking within the community to have that sort of, ceremonial burial.
Yeah, I mean, it was really cool. But then I was like, okay, in Sweden, you have these 3 hills, and then in Egypt, you have the freaking pyramid. The Egyptians did not play when it came to monuments. And then you have some cute hills and then the pyramids, of course, were thousands of years before the Vikings. But it was, and we did a loop around the mounds. And I have to say, it was so pretty seeing the grass kind of blow in the breeze, and then the wind,
the wildflowers.
Oh my gosh! And then by then, our cousin Randy had joined us, and it started to rain a little bit, and I was just I think I was talking to you about, I don't know who I was talking to, but I was really, on this trip, I was really conscious about the moments in between the big moments, like the Swedish trip, the talk, those are the big moments. The small moments are noticing the grass, and the small moments are feeling the breeze, and then the little rain. And I feel like I was more intentional about my observations, and I was just feeling really grateful and thankful that I was there. It was really, I was kind of like, in a space of gratitude. And it feels good to be grateful for these things.
And, along that line, I don't know that I would have ever had Sweden on a list of places to go. But I am so grateful that we had that opportunity, because I saw something so special and so beautiful. And I agree, Candy, like walking through the old cemeteries and reading the names and seeing that they're from 18 something up to 2024.
Right.
But seeing the care that they even take at the plots of each grave, like the beautifully manicured, beautiful flowers. There was such an attention to detail for preserving the memory of these folks that had passed. That was really lovely. We went into Stockholm a few times. One day we went for Candy's birthday, which was on the 18th of August. And we went into Stockholm to go on a cruise.
Yeah.
We did a 2.5-hour cruise to see the different islands of Sweden. Did you know that Sweden is made up of over 30,000 islands?
Yes.
Stockholm itself is a cluster of islands and there are bridges all over.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was really beautiful. Since when we realized I'd be celebrating my birthday in Sweden, Judy's like, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, but I just need to be on the water, make that happen. And she made it happen. Of course, it wasn't like a chartered boat with just the two of us and our cousin. Right. This is a thing that people do. But it was really beautiful. And then afterwards, we were with our cousin, and he was like, he's on his phone. He's like, oh, it's just up here. He was a really good guide because since I have no sense of direction, I would have just not trusted myself and maybe like take a bus or take an Uber or something like that. But we were able to really do a lot of walking.
Yeah.
And they took me to have chocolate cake on my birthday.
Which is a must for my sister.
Yeah, it's a must. And it was, that, of course, that is like a big moment, right. To be celebrating your birthday in Sweden. But one day I was like, damn, I'm tired. And then when I looked on my phone, we had clocked 7 miles.
Yeah.
And then, of course, since my stride is a lot shorter than my sister's and my cousin, if they did 12,000 steps, I did, 1,350.
Right. So another little excursion, like I mentioned, was the food tour.
Yeah.
We met there are several food halls throughout Stockholm, and we met at one that is absolutely gorgeous. And we went in and we tried cheeses. We tried moose salami, wild boar.
Like, did I have reindeer sausage?
No, it wasn't sausage. It was like reindeer, like a deli meat reindeer.
Which is the one that I said tasted like pastrami?
The reindeer. You liked the reindeer. I couldn't get through eating that. I kept thinking of Rudolph. I'm like, I can't go there.
It was delicious. Like on sourdough with some cheese and mustard.
No, couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Couldn't do it. I did do the moose salami, which was good. And I did the wild boar, was just like an enriched ham.
Yeah.
On the food tour, we had a traditional Swedish meal, which was Swedish meatballs with some gravy, some lingonberry sauce, some pickled cucumber. Wow, that was delicious. That was really good to really taste the those traditional Swedish dishes.
And one thing we know, we can't talk about Sweden without mentioning IKEA. So we saw an IKEA, a store on the way, and there was one closer to us. But then, of course, it clicked. The reason that IKEA is blue and yellow is because those are the colors in the Swedish flag.
Yes. Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew? Yeah.
So I want to mention that we also went on that same food tour. We had a traditional fish soup, and that's where we really had the tasting of the licorice. And they shared a smoked licorice, a sweet, and a variety of salted licorices. And like my sister said, it's only black licorice there in Sweden. Red does not exist. And I don't know how, but the Swedes really like the salted licorice. Our cousin Randy tasted it, and he's like, okay, I'm sweating. This is making me sweat. It was so very strong. But yeah,
And it
licorice is
came
a
with a
huge
warning.
thing.
If you have a heart condition, high blood pressure, yeah. I didn't taste that.
Neither did I. I skipped that one.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the food tour. But I want to just mention in Stockholm, while we were there, they were having the Culture Festival. And
Yeah.
they had stages all over the city with live bands playing. And the music one day could be Lebanese,
Mm-hmm.
another day it's Persian, another day it's Italian. And just to see like the celebration of diversity in the city, not to mention the pride flags that were flying.
Yeah.
I just loved seeing how all of these different ethnicities and cultures are celebrated in the city.
Right. And, I think most of our impression, of Sweden is going to be tall blonde people. And yeah, you have your share of those tall blonde people, but there are a lot of black and brown people in Sweden also, and Muslim people wearing hijabs. And it's more of a melting pot than I think a lot of people would assume.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw them, there was a lot of intermarriage also, the African woman with the Swedish guy and their mixed race kids. And that was really nice to see. And then, of course, you see the immigrant from Africa and you expect them to have an accent, but then they're speaking Swedish in their accent, and it just made me feel good. I enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
observing that.
Yeah. Um, One thing I want to mention is Fika.
Yeah.
What is Fika? And before we left, I'm on TikTok. What do you do when you're in Sweden? And they said be sure to have Fika. So the way they picture it, it's like a little pastry, right?
Hmm.
So I go into a store one day and I point to some pastry and I said, "Oh, is that Fika?" And the person said, "No, no, no. Fika isn't a thing. It's a concept. It's an experience." We
Hmm.
learned that Fika is the Swedish version of a coffee break. So
Hmm.
when you Fika, you have your coffee, you have your tea, and you have a traditional cinnamon pastry with coarse sugar on top. And it's all about taking the break, a little self care in the middle of the
Yeah.
day.
And doing it with somebody else.
Yes, yes, you do it
Um,
with another.
yeah, so sharing a moment to relax with somebody. And I
Yeah,
really like that concept.
yeah. So let me think. What else did we do? Sick tuna, the Vasa Museum.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
Vasa Museum. Okay, so this was kind of a spur of the moment thing. Okay, let's try to do this before the food tour. And we went to the Vasa. And the Vasa was a ship that was built,
A Viking ship.
a Viking ship built, Candy,
Y-
1600s.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Um, and it's this beautiful, elaborate, huge ship, just gorgeous with carvings and statues and like cannons and just this fabulous ship.
Hmm.
So the day of the launch of the Vasa on its maiden voyage, it pulled out of its berth and sank within 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So this,
The
oh
reason why it sank is because, and this is something I didn't know, when you have a ship, there's this thing called a ballast, Ballast, which is the weights at the bottom of the ship to keep it weighted
stable. Mm-hmm.
so it won't rock. Anyway, they didn't have enough weights at the bottom, and then they built the cannon holes too close to the water line. So the ship took off, there was a breeze, and it kind of rocked a little bit, took on water, and then it sank. People drowned. And it was there underwater for 333 years. Attempts
Mm-hmm.
had been made to excavate it, and not until 1950s
Right, right.
were they able to pull it up, and then they put it back together. And the Vasa Museum is just this museum built around this massive Viking ship.
Yeah.
It's absolutely fascinating.
It really fascinating. Is. And they talked about how the seawater, the salt water, really preserved the ship. So much so, they found sailors with their clothes still on.
Mm-hmm.
And after 333 years in the water, you would think that that wouldn't happen, but it was preserved almost like in this saltwater tomb. So when it was excavated, it was really, really pristine.
Right.
They showed a movie of how they, the archaeologists kind of sifted through everything to restore it to its beauty, to then be on display. And it was really a great thing to see. I mean, it was super cool.
Definitely have to do that. All right. So let's transition into the conference.
Okay. So ISPACAN, International Society for the Prevention of Child Abuse and Neglect, had us back for the second year in a row, people.
And I just have to interject that when we got selected to speak a second time, and I told our mother, Mommy said, you know what? Them see it the first time and them know say you're not going to go back and talk foolishness. So it's better to be picked the second time, because that means that the first time you were good. So then why you come back?
This is our mother.
That's what Mommy had to say.
Yes. So Candy and I prepared a presentation, and it was Building Bridges, Navigating Cultural Humility in Vulnerable Youth. That was our title, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so the idea behind this presentation, and we spoke on the first day, which was great because we could speak early, get done with it, and then enjoy the rest of the conference without that stress of like, oh my gosh, we still have yet to speak. And we talked about the importance of cultural humility, and we made a very distinct difference between the concept of cultural competence versus cultural humility, and that we must move away from the idea of cultural competence, because competence implies that you're an expert,
like you have in the field. Mastery. Oh, I'm competent in this, but you really can't be competent in somebody else's culture.
No, you cannot. No, you cannot. So how do we move away from that and recognize that what is truly important is cultural humility, where you're on this lifelong quest journey of learning about these other cultures, and you are curious enough about these other cultures that you inquire, you ask other people, explain what that's like for you. How does that influence your belief systems, your morals, your ethics, things of that nature? How does that operate for you in your family? What do I need to know about that so I can treat you better as a therapist or as a physician? And these were really important things to discuss with this audience. We had a packed house. We had like 40, 50 people there, and lots of engagement. And we even did a self-assessment. So people were, assessing themselves on where they stand on cultural humility. And, hopefully they will take that back and think like, what are those areas that I need to work on to be better within my humility?
And then the charge was so that they would come to this conference and go back to their workplace to revolutionize the thinking. And that can start in little steps. If you have forms that need to be completed, what's your name? What do you want to be called? What is your gender? What are your pronouns? And even that is a big step. Making your restrooms not gender assigned. The restroom at our office is not man, woman. You just need to use the bathroom, use the bathroom. And you know what? In Sweden, I actually went into a bathroom where men and women were in the bathroom, and the stall was, it's closed and everything. And it was so not a big deal.
No. And I don't know that it even had a gender noted.
No.
Not even like, gender neutral. It was just bathroom.
It was just a bathroom. Yeah. And And then we showed pictures of advertising where, people would look at it and go, oh, okay, it's just a cute kid. And then you're like, well, why is the black kid being used as a prop? Or why in this reference to Indiana Jones are all the people who um, are Muslim, why are they the aggressors?
Right.
And remember like years ago when all the movies we watched, all the bad people were Russians,
Right.
then the bad people are Muslims, and then the bad people are Germans, and the bad people. And we need to get away from that generalizing and that racism.
Because that sends like a subliminal message,
Yeah,
right? And you
yeah,
see it over and over and over, and it gets ingrained in you. So you begin to think, oh, these are bad people.
right.
But Candy, I want to give our folks an idea of what cultural humility looks like. Would you mind sharing your story?
Yeah. Years ago, I was called to see a kid who had multiple broken bones. Um, the kid was hospitalized, like it just didn't make any sense. And then when I went to the hospital room and I walked in, the parents said, oh, I think you should know we're Satanists. So, of course, in my heart, I was like, "What the heck is this?" What? And I just said, "Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know. I'm not really familiar with that belief system or the cultural practices of that. Is there anything that you do in terms of feeding or caring for your child that is affected by these beliefs?" And they said, oh, no. And then they clarified, and I examined the child, and it wasn't abuse. The kid had a genetic condition. Um, but I called my sister and said, you would
Mm-hmm.
not believe what I just saw. And I told her how proud I was of myself for not jumping to conclusions
Right.
about this kid, this family, etc. So,
So
go
mhm,
ahead.
that was an example of cultural humility. So
Mm-hmm.
in that moment, Candy was like, wait, I don't know what this is. What does this mean for the child? So let me just ask them in a
Mm-hmm.
respectful
Yeah.
um, manner. Let me ask the family, what does this mean in regards to your child? I think somebody who would be closed off to exercising cultural humility would be like, that's crazy. What are you
Yeah.
people talking about?
Yeah.
That's insane. What do you
Yeah.
worship, the devil?
Uh-huh.
And that could go really wrong
It could go sideways.
for that child. So being able to exercise some cultural humility and to remain like curious about
Mm-hmm.
it, I think made a huge difference in their experience with you. Because my
Yeah.
guess is they've told other people that, and other people have,
It wasn't
kind of
well
jumped to
received. Yeah.
conclusions. Yeah.
Yeah. And then another example I gave is years ago, I saw a girl and she was very young and she was being trafficked. And I knew it, and she lied to me, and I didn't call her a liar, but I knew she was lying. And then she came back several years later to me, and because she was ready to leave the life. And I said, why'd you come back here? And she said, because you were nice to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't judge her. I didn't
Right.
judge her. Treated her with kindness, and that goes a long way, you know?
So I want to point out that cultural humility absolutely has to do with one's racial background, their cultural, their religious, their ability, disability, but also, like Candy just said, in this case, that young client, that young patient, she was coming from a culture of trafficking,
Yeah,
right? And you don't really think like that's a culture, but that was the life she was
right,
living.
right.
So the fact that you were able to treat her with kindness and not, call her out for her
Yeah,
behaviors or anything, I think that also was a great example of how we can be culturally humble to something that maybe we're not very familiar with, doing it with respect so that, your client, your patient feels seen and heard.
Yes. And as somebody pointed out in our talk, you can discriminate against somebody for their disability, for their age, for their class. So if you have, say, somebody who's your housekeeper, you might assume that her kids aren't going to college. I had a housekeeper whose daughter was getting her doctorate in sociology. So you can't make assumptions about people. It's just kind of taking away the assumptions. Just
Right.
because you're disabled, just because you can't walk, doesn't mean you aren't intelligent. Just
Right.
because you work as a domestic doesn't mean that you yourself aren't smart. So it's to
Right.
just kind of take over those preconceived notions, and we all have them. We all
Yes.
have those biases. That's important. If you say, I have no bias, are you kidding
No.
me? I
No.
mean, the
No.
only person I know who said they don't have any bias is Donald Trump. But this is not a political
No, because
podcast.
we could go off the rails
Right.
on that one.
But we all have biases. And a woman brought up her example. She said, I didn't think I was biased, but she's now dating and she's on these dating websites. And she said, I find myself avoiding certain ethnicities and races. And I didn't think I had those biases.
Right. But I think right there is a great example of somebody who has the self-awareness to check herself,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
To say, why am I swiping left on all of those people?
Mm-hmm.
And she had the wherewithal to recognize, like, wait, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Check herself, examine where those biases came from. So maybe she could start swiping right, or whichever direction is a positive direction.
I never remembered the direction.
So she can be more open to receiving, interest from people that maybe she wouldn't have thought of before.
Right.
But and after our talk, for the duration of the conference, people were approaching us. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I didn't look at it from that perspective. I really appreciated what you had to share, how you shared your story. And one of the things I noticed, Candy, ISPACAN it was the largest of its conferences thus far, 900 people, over 75 countries represented.
Yeah.
It is like so much brain power, so much commitment, all towards one goal, regardless of where you are in the world: the prevention of child abuse and neglect. Love the fact that there's so many people doing this work.
And violence. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And shoot, I forgot my point. But I think it's the fact that this sort of this happens cultural.
Everywhere.
Exactly. It happens everywhere. So you could have been in our workshop and you could have been from Uganda and someone else from Finland, and they both get it.
Yeah.
Because they see it. It might show up differently in their country, but they see it and they know the importance of it.
Yeah. And when we spoke, there were a couple of Americans. They were from law enforcement from Lansing, Michigan. And the guy, he thanked me and said he really enjoyed the talk. And then afterwards, we got hugs. People asked if they could hug us.
People coming up and they're like, I want to give you a hug. Is it okay? I'm like, absolutely. I had like 4 or 5 people stop to hug me. But I also note, and this is tooting our horn just a little bit, that when we present, whether it was last year in Edinburgh or this year in Uppsala, we make it very interactive. We make it so our audience are doing things, that we're having a conversation. It's not a lecture. And a lot of the workshops that we attend is more lecture based.
Yeah.
So, which is very, very powerful and significant, and we need that. But Candy and I like to mix it up a little bit and have our people get involved. And so I think that just connection and having a conversation as opposed to a lecture really helps them understand the material better, and they're able to relate to it better, and then they're able to share their stories.
Yeah. And then we gave handouts with the quiz. And then, there were people taking pictures of the slides. And I actually love that, because that means they're going to go home look at it, maybe say, how am I going to take this into my job? What am I going to do? Or maybe the picture of the slides where we had the subtle racism, maybe they're going to show that to their friends and say, do you see a problem with this? Or what do you see here? On the cover of the New Yorker recently is a drawing of like two women of color, one sitting on a bench, and they're at a park and they're holding, they're watching these kids play, white kids play, and then one black woman, she's holding up a picture, and it's a person of color in a graduation cap, and people are like, what do you see? A lot of people who aren't people of color is like, oh, this is just a day at the park. When I looked at it, I was thinking about the woman showing the graduation picture of her son and how the money that she made at this job helped to educate her son so he could graduate. And I'm thinking, I thought about the pride she must have of maybe being an immigrant, a first generation. But the thing is, if you look at that cover, everybody's going to see different stuff. Somebody might say, oh, this is just like a park day, play day. But it was so much more layered for me, being an immigrant, being a person of color, coming from a family who, when they moved to America, had to be domestics. So it's one situation, but so many different interpretations.
Yeah. And we talked about that too, just the different perspectives you can have and how those different perspectives could lead you to a place of resistance. And it's like, okay, so how do I acknowledge that, and how do I start to ask those questions in a respectful, in a dignified manner so I can learn? Because at the end of the day, cultural humility is letting our clients and our patients know that they're the experts in their lives.
Exactly.
I'm along for the ride. Educate me. Educate me. So as ISPACAN wound down, we were informed
next year,
Lithuania. Lithuania, another one that would not be on my list.
Never
but
on my bucket list.
I'm going to be booking that ticket because I will be at ISPACAN, and we will submit an abstract and cross our fingers. Mommy can say, well,
it's free time you go. Yeah, it's free time you go. No, that me, Candy, maybe you should be on the board. Yeah, but and our cousin Randy plans on coming with us. So that's going to be another great trip. I think, what's interesting about being at ISPACAN is that it's very easy for you to feel like you work at your agency protecting kids or protecting women, and you're working all by yourself and nobody outside of your country cares. But ISPACAN brings you people from all across the world: China, Japan, Kenya, Sweden, Denmark, all of those places. And it really bolsters your enthusiasm for the work that you're doing, because you know that everybody cares about these important issues.
Yeah. It's incredibly motivating and inspirational to take part in these conferences, and just to know that, there's a singular goal. The environment might be different, but the goal is the same. And knowing that there are people out there working on the same thing that you're working on, it's just inspirational. And I feel very honored to have been able to attend and to present for a second time. I just feel so grateful that they see value in the things that we have to offer, and that they want to share this with all of the other participants. So we got to think about what we want to do for next year, because we got to write that abstract.
Yes, we do.
So we can do it all over again.
Yeah, they call us the Grant Sisters.
Yes,
aptly so.
Yes.
Yeah. Although I wish they would call us
the Grant
Soka.
Sisters. The Grant Sisters. So we just had a wonderful time in Sweden. And it was a beautiful trip. So thankful that our cousin could join us. So thankful for the days that we could just roam around and enjoy Sweden, the food, the views, the history, so much history. And then to be a part of the conference again was a very special trip. And again, being able to do it with my sister. Candy, we didn't even talk about mango sorbet or the Thai food. Oh my
No,
gosh.
but you know what? Just go to our Instagram and you'll see my my little ad for the mango sorbet. You will see our bit about the Swedish water.
Yes.
And yeah, great restaurants in
Yeah.
Uppsala. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you to Soka. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. Please remember to like, share, follow, to give us a review. 5 stars would be fantastic. And we just love having you on this journey with us.
Thank you.
No Longer Network.